But here we are. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Jesse. My pronouns are he and him, and I will be our GM as we play Vow of the Knight-Aspirant of the. I'll get it right eventually, Lexi. I promise. Vow of the Knight-Aspirants, by Cloven Pine Games, in playtest now. It's fun. We're doing it. So this is a game. Go into the intro text, right? So this is a game about squires on the cusp of knighthood, venturing into the realms of Castile on a quest to prove themselves worthy and discover the elusive Tower Perilous. What wrongs will you right, and what lessons will you learn along the way? Right. This is a game about young squires trying to figure out who they are, to follow codes of chivalry and learn and understand what they believe codes of chivalry to be. Our aim is to have a fun time together, telling a cool story about these young squires, these knight aspirants, who are off questing to learn a little bit about them and perhaps ourselves, but mostly about them, perhaps, although probably not in a 4-session run, perhaps discover the Tower Perilous, but at the very least, quest in its wake. The tone is sort of YA fiction. I'd say we're probably going to run PG to PG-13 rated kind of stuff. I'm not going to be counting people's swear words or anything, but we're not going to have a lot of sort of like detailed gore. We're playing. We might shade a little dark in tone sometimes. The characters will be confronting real evil. They will have their own moral struggles, and there's no guarantees that they will choose correctly by our lights, although perhaps by theirs. But ultimately, sort of the vibe is the vibe is one of sort of aspiring to do right and to do well, even and do good, even if the characters don't always succeed, even if it's a struggle sometimes. I'd say is sort of where we're going to sit in terms of tone. Some touchstones. The ones explicitly mentioned in the play materials are the Tortal novels of Tamara Pierce, books that are very, very dear to my heart, because though I did not read them very much myself as a young person, they were like some of the first books that my now wife lent me a lot of years ago now. So that was like, so it was like I'd sort of read some of them before, but I hadn't like gone in deep. And they're some of her favorite books. So there's that. So the Tortal novels of Tamara Pierce, but then also sort of coming. That's in sort of the play materials, but then also stuff that I'm probably going to throw in are so what I wrote in the pitch, Howard Pyle's adaptation of the King Arthur stories, which I very much grew up on. I tried to tuck in these and nows for a while without understanding how those actually work grammatically, not like to everyone, but occasionally. Completely wrong. Did not understand the grammar. Because I'm that kind of nerd. The Lord Alexander's Pride Inn Chronicles, which did mean a great deal to me as a young person. Patricia McKillop's Riddle Master of Head books. Also about sort of finding your place in the world, in a world that is sometimes hostile, and trying to learn how to do right by the people who you're responsible to and for. And the sort of classic Green Knight. I have not actually, unlike forgot who mentioned it. Ian, maybe. I have not actually seen the recent film. I've heard it's good, but I'm a very big fan of sort of the medieval tale, and it does and asks interesting questions about chivalry and knighthood and what it means to be an adult. And so I'll probably throw some of that stuff in too. Anyway, so yeah, those are some of the touchstones we're talking about in terms of tone and vibe as well as content. Subject matter. So with that in mind, the subject matter is probably, there's going to be violence. There are fights. There are going to occasionally be creatures who might be somewhat frightening, inhuman creatures. There may be there may, if we're interested, I'm sure there could be some romance. That's often an important part of these kinds of stories. And if you're interested in exploring sort of chivalry around romance, I think that's something that's very easy to put into play as part of the story. Yeah, so those are some things that are going to hit. We're going to hit in terms of subject matter, and we are using some safety tools to navigate some of this content. So we're using the X card. The X card allows anyone to exercise any content at any time for any reason, simply by saying X or X card, or by writing in the chat X card, or by going like this. I did not start out create a die roller, but I will in a minute. And that die roller will have a button for the X card if anyone wants to use that. So, and you could just say, nope, that's not happening, X, and it's done, it's gone, whatever it is. No justification required. I may occasionally ask a question just if I'm not clear exactly what piece of something is being X carded so that we don't end up accidentally continuing with it. We're also using some of Bo Sheldon's script change tools. Those includes rewind. Let's just rewind back past anything that happens if we didn't like it. That didn't feel right to me. Can we redo that scene or just that last interaction or whatever? Something was off. And we will do it immediately. Again, no justification required. We can pause if we ever just need to say, hey, folks, this is getting a little intense. Can we just breathe for a minute? We can also use the pause sometimes it's helpful to have a tool to say, hey, let's just stop and talk about this outside of the fiction. If we're sort of in some heated role play and we need to step back. So pause can be used for that as well. And then when we're ready, we'll just hit play and keep on going. And then fast forward lets us say, hey, we all know what's about to happen and a beloved NPC is about to die, perhaps, or some other thing that we can all agree will happen in the fiction. But it's not necessarily going to but we're not going to play it out. We're not going to see it. So for example, as I said before, beloved NPC might be about to die, and we will, we'll say, well, okay, that happened, but we're not going to, we'll move on, and we can sort of mourn their loss, but we won't have put the death on scene. Sorry if I got lost in the middle of the spiel there. And then we are also using lines and veils. There is a safety and resources tab in the character keeper. This includes where you can find a list of lines and veils. Lines are things that will never appear in our game at all. Veils are things that can appear in the fiction, but will not sort of be zoomed in on or put on camera. The example I like to give is in an old movie or perhaps a young adult novel. You might have a couple kiss and fade to black, right? Then everyone knows sort of what happened in the veiled scene, but it's not put directly on camera. So everyone take a second. You can fill in your lines and veils in the character keeper. I have not done mine yet either. So when you're done, just make a note in the chat so that everybody knows that so I know that you're done. Feel free if something is in veils and you want it to be aligned to just move it into lines. Yeah, anyone who's done, feel free to please just note in the chat. All right, so we have a good list of lines and veils here. And with that, let's create characters. So here's an interesting thing about this game, which exists in some other PBTA games, which is very, very cool. So every character picks 2 playbooks. This wasn't in it initially, so if you look, there's a playbook, there's a playbook folder as well in the folders that has PDF versions of all the playbooks. There's a large number of playbooks because everyone chooses 2 playbooks. There is a temperament, choose a temperament playbook, which is named after an animal, and an aspiration playbook, which is named after an object. I don't know if folks had a chance to take a look at these yet. There is quite a bit. So if anyone has, I think the best way to do this is to start with temperament. Let me talk to you about Alexi. How do you usually run this when you've had people picking playbooks? It's easier with actually having the sheets to look in front of you, but
it's easier with the physical ones, yeah, because then you can kind of pass them around, look at the combinations.
Mm-hmm. But I think what I'd like to do even is to start with temperament and then come back around to aspiration, and we'll see how that works.
Okay.
If someone sees a temperament and an aspiration, like, oh, this is the combo that I know this is what looks great for me, feel free to call it out beforehand, and then we can sort of spin it around. But I'm just going to throw it out to the table. Does anyone have a temperament playbook that really, really sings to them? The temperament playbooks provide your stats for the most part, and sort of your abilities, your background, stuff like that.
I'd like to lay an early claim to the Jackdaw.
Ooh, nice.
Sure.
I have played some stoic characters recently, and I would like to crack a smile now and then.
Sounds great. So go ahead and grab a spot on the character keeper and take the Jackdaw. There's no one else who's like, no, I wanted that. Cool. All right. Anybody else who has a temperament playbook that's singing to them that they would love to play?
I'd be interested in playing the owl, unless that's someone else's top pick.
Oh, all right. Grab it. It is yours.
I suppose I'm interested in the serpent, unless Robbie is like really into that.
Robbie, you really into the serpent? All right, no. That's yours, Stephen. And Robbie, how about you? Is there a temperament?
Maybe to lean into the whole youth facing the world. Maybe the foal.
Sure, that's a fun one. Love it. Cool. All right. Since you picked, you can definitely skip if you want. But I want to let's do aspiration in reverse order. So Robbie, is there an aspiration that's singing to you here?
All right.
And feel free to say skip if not. But
let me take a quick look. I mean, I'm probably just going to be going on the title.
Yeah. There's like the little catchphrases at the top of the thing. Those are often those mostly like a special ability and your XP triggers and.
I mean, I'm just just going with complete like first impressions, but maybe the hourglass.
Ooh.
Ooh,
That's so fun.
That's so fun. A poor little fool who can see the future.
Yes.
Steven, how about you?
I'm thinking the chalice.
Cool. Love it. And Alexi.
The plume.
Ooh. I like that everyone has like, or most people have sort of like, I know what I want. How about you, Ian? Do you know what you want now?
Toss up between the bridge and the anvil for me. Wonder if anybody has some thoughts on that.
Bridge of the Anvil. They're both fun. The irreverent Joker diplomat. That's a fun archetype.
Or the Joker / Tinkerer, right?
Yeah.
Building stuff.
I think probably the anvil based on that. Yeah. I'd rather not, I definitely have been in some situations in games where it's been like, we've got the face in the party and they take every opportunity to just like crack a joke, and, I'd like to come up with some fun, with some funny little doodads.
Sure.
Nice.
Sure. All right. So people take a few seconds, take a few minutes, make your choices. And then we'll do some introductions. I will ask you some questions. And if you have any questions about any of the stuff, feel free to ask me.
I'll give my like little technical caveat here. The one bit of the character keeper that is kind of not as smooth as I want it to be is you have to copy over your aspiration move from the aspiration move tab to the main tab. If you find yourself running into trouble with that, just like tell me and I'll handle the copy pasting in such a way that it doesn't break the formatting. Yeah, that's my little disclaimer.
Thank you. That is helpful. And when you're done, you can just write in the chat that you're all set. I'll do this. I'll do. There is now a dice roller in the safety and resources tab, and I'm putting it in the chat as well.
So, Jesse, on the character keeper, tell me what else I should be.
I think I mean, you could you could choose a picture if you want.
Uh-huh.
Your cheer is not quite right it's set as TBD for reasons I'm not sure of, but you should choose your cheer based on whatever your playbook is, and your if you don't know what that is, I can look it up in the.
Oh, okay. Yeah, give me a second here. So the cheer. Zero. Oh yeah, I see. Speed 0.
But other than that, you seem to have everything. Seem to be set. Sounds good, Stephen. Oh, and you need a name and pronouns, Robbie. That's the other thing.
Okay.
But other than that, you seem all set. Hmm. Just about done, Ian? Okay. When we're all set, when Alexi is back, we'll do character introductions, and then we'll take our first break. Character introductions will include lots of questions from me, but also from other people. Feel free to jump in and ask questions. Then I think we're gonna come back. I actually think I'm gonna ask you each to create a couple NPCs as well, just to sort of flesh out our cast a little bit, and then we'll sort of move in from there.
If that's the case, I'm just gonna grab some water right now.
You know what? Let's take our first break. We're waiting for Lexi. Let's take our first break. I'll put a note in the chat so he can see it. Let's all come back at a little bit early, but let's come back at 52 past the hour, and then in 10, and we'll do our character introductions then and stuff. Okay, cool.
Hi.
Hello, hello, hello. All right. Hello, hello, hello. All right. Let's meet these characters. How I want to do this is we're gonna go left, right across the character keeper. You'll introduce yourself again in case we share this recording and people want to know who you are. And then also your character. All and anyone can ask, we'll ask questions just to sort of flesh out our knowledge and understanding of who they are and how they fit into the setting. And then I'm going to do a second round where I ask kind of specific questions of all of you. And then probably we'll build on that a little bit. Specific questions of all of you. And then we can sort of build some follow-up questions that won't all be the same, right? And again, anyone's welcome to. If you're curious about something about another player's character, please chime in and ask. It doesn't just have to be me. Alexi, why don't you tell us about Olwen?
Yeah, so I am Alexi, he, him. Follow my gaming endeavors at Cloven Pine Games. Super excited to be playing this series of Vow of the Knight-Aspirants. I am playing Olwen, who is the owl and the plume. So I took the temperament playbook, the owl, and the aspiration playbook, the plume. The owl specifies that you are a scholar, right? Someone who has read a lot and kind of learned about the world through books, and now you're venturing into that world. So my thought here is that Olwen grew up as a ward at a monastery, a little island monastery of Darrow, and who knows what her origin is. Probably the illegitimate daughter of some noble who has stashed her here, but no one has informed her of this, right? She just knows she is a student of the kind of religious women at this monastery, and she she learned to read, right? She's literate and fascinated by books, and she read the tales of the adventures of Saint Johanna, the maiden knight, right, and kind of idolized this character and the sometimes far-fetched stories that were told in her hagiographies. And then when the day came and Seathland raiders attacked the monastery at Darrow, Olwen knew what to do, right? She sprang into action and managed, in fact, to trap a bunch of Seathlanders in the crypt of the monastery, so that by the time Sir Peravere came to try and rescue the monastery, he found that this girl had succeeded at capturing these warriors using trickery and cunning and some well-placed booby traps, and he was so impressed he offered to take her on as a squire. And so she jumped at this opportunity, left the confines of the monastery, and is hoping to make a name for herself adventuring. That's my thought on the deal with Olwen. From the pick list, I picked holy background, right? That's the monastery. Look, drumming fingers, a short sword and dagger is what she's armed with, and staring eyes, right? So she's, I think, full of kind of pent up energy and curiosity about this world. The plume, the aspiration playbook, represents a kind of fascination with stories and desire to enter into tales herself. So I can maybe run down the tales that I picked from that playbook, just to give a sense of some goals the character / player have here. So I picked dramatically enter a dangerous situation, fight with an ally for their own good, deliberately get captured as part of a plan, and uncover an ancient secret. So those are all on Olwen's to-do list here. Oh, you're muted, Jesse.
Awesome. And if you don't mind, the name of the knight who found you, and took you on, has already gone in one ear and out the other. If you could add their name to the NPC list,
Yeah.
in a little bit, I'll ask you some questions about them.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you a couple questions about the monastery first. Is there, like, do you still have a connection to anyone there? Did you build relationships there? Like what was your sort of relationship to the people and the institution?
Yeah, I think she was a sort of partial fit in the monastery, right? There were sisters that appreciated her interest in texts and stories of saints, and there were those that poo-pooed the fact she was interested in the bloody and exciting ones and not the stories of saints that stayed at monasteries and grew holy through prayer, right? Which was which she tried to be interested in those, but that was never what captured her. So I think there are probably people who are happy for her and people who are happy to see the back of her, and she probably feels some connection back to them too, while also a sense that this is what she has to do. She's given the chance to go out into the world.
Yeah, I mean, I get like was the abbot or abbess singing "How to Solve a Problem" like Olwen? Like, is that the vibe that we're getting here? Like, well liked but weird.
Probably not where she could hear, but potentially yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'd love you to create an NPC who from the monastery.
Yeah, an elder sister from.
Yeah, just some connection, and it can be and just like a note on the relationship, disapproving, mild condescension, or like thrill, or like completely, so grateful that Owen's finally found her place, whatever the relationship is, right? However you want to frame it. I'd love you to do that. Cool. So you've already built in some of the follow-up questions I was going to ask later, so that's helpful. Cool. Okay, Stephen, tell us about Caradoc. Unless you want to wait, because you said you had some stuff you want to hear from other people.
I want to wait. I have I'm unsure of the background, and I'm gonna decide on it once I figure out the juiciest place to connect it into someone. Because I have some really my background is a choice. So.
Yeah, I see. I love
dramatic options there.
Yeah. All right, so Ian, why don't you tell us about Galen?
Yeah. Okay. Well, my Galen is not as well developed, I think, as Alexi's character, but
don't worry about it. We'll get
give
there.
It a bash. Yeah. So Galen is a young man of maybe 14 or 15. His temperament playbook is the Jackdaw, which is someone who is kind of a prankster, kind of a joker, a trick, someone who likes to jape, somebody who likes to lighten the mood when things get a little too dour. Which I'm sure has gone over gangbusters with whatever poor Knight-at-Arms has been saddled with him. And what is it the Aspiration playbook? Is that right? The Aspiration playbook that I chose is the Anvil. The Anvil is all about crafting things, coming up with sort of like a tricky or tinkering solutions, pulling out just the right device for the job at hand. I think that the sort of castle fastness that Galen Merchant, which is his surname, grew up in and has sort of spent his days sort of running about and haunting in the way that boys do, has a learned sage who lives there. I'm going to call her Eloise of Jovian Hill is her name. And she's an elderly woman who spends most of her time looking at the stars. She's an astronomer. But she happens to have some other different, accumulated craft that she, she sort of gave in and taught Galen some things when he would not stop pestering her about it. And I think he's very fond of her. In a way that he would never admit. I think that so I've chosen my background here is mercantile. I think probably Galen's family are of the kind of new class of traveling merchants, and so they are away for much of the year. His look is that he has a flashy smile, which comes easily and often. Bright, toothy smile. He carries around with him, I have written here, a bandolier of explosive petards. I think it's a satchel of just lots of different kinds of things, many of which are volatile in a particular kind of way. And he has dancing eyes. There's always a joke going on for Galen, and whether you're in on it or not, he's laughing about something. I'm not sure what else to say. My lessons here that I'm supposed to see if I check are to provide a smile and a laugh, mighty weapons indeed when times are darkest, and to never be satisfied with less than perfection, as a true builder should.
Fantastic. Love it. So you mentioned, so first of all, if you could, again, names have gone out of my head very quickly. Sure. If you could stick that NPC that you mentioned in the NPC tab at some point.
I will absolutely do so. Eloise.
Eloise, yes, thank you. I should remember it because I read that book a lot. But it's called Eloise. You mentioned you mercantile background, your family, you said they traveled around a lot. So are they based? So we haven't talked a lot about sort of the sort of setting, Castany. It's 5 kingdoms recently united by the king, who has also in the aftermath of that recently married. Or 5 provinces. I forget the term that gets used here, but it's 5 whatever.
Realms.
5 realms. And so like we don't need to go into too much detail. We'll flesh out more of that in play as it becomes necessary. But is your family? You're at court learning to be a knight, right? Is your family from the capital or from one of the cities or towns of the other realms, right? The provinces, perhaps, right? Are you where are you based? Where are you from? This mercantile family.
It's definitely one of the other sort of townships. Surrounding. I think it's not so much like a mercantile family as it is just like a mercantile father.
Got it.
This is a guy who has really grinded, and has been able to send his kid to private school.
Got it. So this is very much, I like this. We're gonna get some class stuff in here, right? You're very much part of this new, right? The king has just opened up the knighthood to the non-noble classes, and here you are, one generation up from dirt, already training in the capital. I love it. That's great. If you want to put
can't take it seriously.
Yeah. Love it. If you want to put your father in the NPC tab
Sure.
also, that would be great. What kind of, does he have like expectations of you? Like, what does he think about all of this? Does he think you're making good use of your education?
I think
Does
that
he have any clue, or is he too busy to even know or care? I mean, that's another.
I mean, I think he's just gone a lot
Yeah.
of the time, right?
Mhm.
I think that he doesn't know enough about it to be able to say.
Got it.
He's
So
just
when-
like, you're in there, it's a sure thing, you know?
Got it. So it will be fun if he ever shows up on one of his sales trips. Cool. Love it. Anyone else have any questions for Galen before we move over to Marion? No.
What's the coolest thing you've ever built?
Oh, good question.
How there's no magic going on here.
There could be.
My brain is giving me like, hey, do you guys know what strand beasts are?
Yes.
Strand
Oh,
beasts
man,
are sort
yeah.
of like huge mobile sculptures that kind of like move, like you wind them up like a spring, or they're somehow wind powered or something, and they will like ambulate slowly across like the beach or a plane or something like that. I think that he's made like a small version of this, like maybe the size of like a dog or something like that. That is a wonderful thing that has absolutely no use to anyone.
Yeah.
And he loves this little contraption, and I think was pretty stung when people like, after the 6th or 7th time that he showed it off, people were like, cool, yeah, we've seen that. Great. I think that he is trying to find the next thing that will like wow people.
That's very, very cool. I also like that it's not useful. I think that's awesome. It's just cool. Cool. Love it. There is a court wizard, so it's not like there's no magic, I should say. The wizard Kestrel is important, and we're going to come back around. We're going to come back around to some of the more kind of magical bits when I swing back around with more questions. All right, Robbie, want to tell us a little bit more about Marion Griffin of Shoreditch? Shoreditch? You tell me, I guess.
Well, yeah, I originally on the name generator had Marion Shoreditch, but I was thinking the Marion's family wants to bury that name because of their aspirations, and so they go by the name Griffin. And I think Marion has kind of grown up in a family that there's something about the family's past, or maybe a few things about their past that they are trying to kind of keep in the closet, kind of keep buried. And I, we could play to find out what some of that is, because I don't think that they fully have revealed that to Marion. And they have been overly protective of Marion and her siblings. She senses that this has something to do with, but she's not, fully understand why that they've been so protective of the kids. But, she thinks it has, that there's something embarrassing or unseemly about the past. But it is a mercantile family with high aspirations that has, amassed a considerable amount of wealth. I think unlike, unlike, is it Galen, whose father is not around, I think from Marion's point of view, the parents are too much around, right, and have been trying to kind of keep the reins on the kids.
So
At least
so
that's the way she grew up. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I guess follow-up question is, so now she's, and we'll come back to who you're sort of squired to a bit, but like so now you're off on your own, right? You're a squire, and in the capital at the castle. You're in training. Like, did they send someone to keep an eye on you? Do they have a connection there already who promised to keep an eye? I mean, I don't know. Maybe is there? Are they are they local? Are they a mercantile family in the capital, and so it's not hard for them to keep an eye on you? Like, what's their sort of how are they maintaining this kind of supervision, or are they just scared without it?
Why don't we say that they they have amassed a tremendous amount of wealth, and I think have grown weary of having to keep the tabs on the kids, and so they have they've paid somebody. I mean, they have sent a tremendous treasure to somebody in the capital who is going to be training Marion. But for the family part of this is that, oh, thank goodness, at least one fewer child for us to have to keep tabs on, because we are sending a good amount of our wealth over to a noble who maybe is in some need of wealth, right?
I love this so much. Is this the knight you're squired to?
Yes.
Like they took you on like as a financial sort of deal? I love that. That's like we're gonna pick at that a whole bunch, right? Like, how does that fit in with the ideals of love it. This is cool. Yeah. So come up with if you don't mind coming up with like a name. All of these, especially the knights, but all of the NPCs are gonna eventually have lessons they're trying to impart. And I'll come up with those unless you have one that you're like, I have a great idea for this guy. But generally speaking, that's, I think, a GM side thing. So I'm going to be creating that.
Yeah. So I have a name, and I'll put it in the NPC, but it's going to be Folk Yaxley.
Folk Yaxley. Amazing. That's a great name. Cool. I want to ask you also about this prophetic gift you have. Like, are you aware of it yet? Is this like is this something that runs in your family? Is it something that's just come to you? Like, what's the deal with it?
Maybe this will be an opportunity to add another NPC.
Sure.
But I think Folk Yaxley has a cook who has some type of I mean is a very good cook, but has a kind of maybe like a kind of folkish background, kind of knows how to read cards, how to read kind of omens of nature and things like that. And this woman has kind of taken kind of has developed a relationship with Marion, right? I mean that Marion sometimes is like to kind of hang out in the kitchen, kind of listening to this woman who is a kind of cook in there, and the cook is kind of passed on, things, right, of this kind of prophetic, kind of tales of prophecy, or kind of showed her some things that she does to kind of foretell the future.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. That's so good. Cool. Anyone else? Anyone else have questions for Marion?
So is this something is that gift, is it something your family is aware of?
No, I don't. So,
Okay.
and I don't think I would. I think it, that type of stuff, might be embarrassing to them. That they I think my parents are all about maintaining proper appearances, and I don't think something of this nature would be considered fitting for them.
Cool. Cool. All right. Stephen, now have you figured
Yeah,
out where you want
I
to be
guess
here with
I was gonna think about
Caradoc?
that. I wanted to see what some of the other folks said. I think that Caradoc uses depending on the situation, he or she pronouns. I think that what I will go with is Scion of Heretics is the background I'm picking here. I think that the family of Caradoc was like I know we're kind of in Arthurian, so like religion is kind of a big hazy nebulous thing in those stories. But I think it's kind of on the intersection of Christianity and pre-Christian practices. I think that there is a reputation for witchery and passage into places that should not be passed among my family, and I think that's what ultimately led to many of them being driven from the realm once the kingdoms were united. In particular, I think just to really create some tension for other player characters, I think it's that my mother delivered a prophecy about the doom of the realm that was taken as a curse.
Wow, that's powerful. I like that a
And
lot.
I think since then, Caradoc has been, because I think many of her family were either killed or driven into hiding or exile. She has been a ward of the. She was like the youngest of the family, and has been the ward of the crown for several years. Ward, hostage. It's always hazy in medieval families.
Okay, because I want to talk about what that means for a second. Okay, because I'm really, really excited about it. I love that so much. So the way the sort of like framing of this moment in history is, right, is that you've got a king, a newly married to his warrior queen, right, at the end of this period of reuniting the realms, right? So I love, like, are you raised as the king's younger sibling? Right? Is there like a Sir kind of K vibe here? Thinking about like we have no background on how the king, like, this is, you're free to tell us what is this royal family like and how do you fit into it?
Yeah, I guess.
Because I love this so much, by the way. It's like just it's real good.
I guess that makes sense. I wasn't sure how old this king would be, but if they're on the younger side, it's probably more likely I've been treated like more like a younger sibling than like a child.
Sure, but who, like, maybe,
Yes. Yeah.
there's a world where there's another king, right, who's the
Yeah.
king's father, right, the king of one of the realms, right, and when his son or queen, right, when his son again, names escape me. Hadathar, unites the realms and becomes the High King of them all, right? Like, you could still be the son of a living king, the child of a living king, in the realm that the capital sits, right? Something like that, if that's what you want. We can create that character. That would be interesting.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, just like I'm thinking about right. So there's a few different ways to think about, right, the King Hadathar having united the realms, right? Maybe
Yeah.
King Hadathar is the king of one of the realms, and he's gone ahead and united all of them under the banner of that one realm.
Okay.
Right? But maybe, right, he's a free agent of some kind, or the child of the king of one of the realms, and not actually the ruler himself, right? And he unites them and becomes the High King over all the kings, including, and is not himself the actual king of any individual realm. And so you could have his father or his brother or whatever being the king of a realm, and then he's, and you could be you could still be the child of a living king. It's the ward of a living king rather than the ward of the ward sibling of the king.
No, I think I like the
That's
idea that you
complicated.
brought up of the ward sibling. I think that's
Mhm.
an interesting relationship.
So who raised you? Was it Hadathar? I mean, he could be enough older to have raised you too, without that's
No, I don't think so. I think it was let's see. Sorry, I'm just looking up some names here.
Yeah, sure.
I think her full name is like Marigold Bolton. I think that she was the wet nurse of the king, who often ends up staying on as like the caretaker. And then like at this point she is like kind of almost, I'm thinking now of Spinning Silver, and the kind of retirement plan for the wet nurse is to eventually, like, the child you take care of will marry up, and then you'll be taking care of them because you took care of them as a child. I think that she is sort of a guest of the king in the house, and I think that she is like a kind of beloved figure, but she that is kind of still has like a minor presence in the court.
Sure, I love that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Oh, I have more heresy questions, but also we'll come back to some of those in play, I think. I do want to throw out another touchstone that I didn't mention, but is always in the back of my head when doing these stories. I don't know how I didn't write it down, but connected to that is also Catherine Kurtz's Durini novels, which were like super influential to me as a young kid reading fantasy. It's a lot of like high court politics for young adult audiences, and like ecclesiastical politics and magic. There's this minority that does magic and a separate church heart. It's crazy. It's cool. It's awesome. I've been told it doesn't hold up to adult reading, and so I'm scared to read it again.
Email me a link to that though, because I think that could be useful for my research.
They were wonderful to read at the age of 8, and then through the age of 12 or whatever when I was reading them. There's a lot of them. One of the first like kind of fantasy series that was like very historical, kind of pointed, looking at European history as like and politics as a real touchstone instead of all fairy stuff. Good stuff. Anyways, sorry, that was just a digression. But so I'm definitely, my head's in this space too. Cool. Love it. All right. Anyone else have any questions for Caradoc? No. Okay. So what I want.
So do you want, because you said 2 NPCs, do I need to come up with, or are we doing that next?
Well, sort of. Honestly, people have been kind of like doing NPCs as we go, and so it's kind of turned out okay. So I'll probably ask some follow-up questions that will maybe spin into another NPC or two as we go, but we don't have to go crazy either. There's a lot already. I'm definitely going to ask anyone who has not mentioned who they are squired to. That's going to be a question in a second. So think about that. You could be squired to the same knight as someone else also, which might be a fun way to create a relationship there. So something to think about if that's at all appealing. So now we're going to go back in the opposite order. So part of the premise of this game, which we haven't really talked about yet, is that so there's the Tower Perilous, which I mentioned briefly when I was talking about the concepts of the game. A site of danger and wonder hidden somewhere in the fine realms. Each one of you has had a strange dream calling you to seek the tower. For your good and the good of the realm, and the wizard Kestrel vouched that there was truth in these dreams. So, we're not going to start out on the quest to seek the Castle Perilous. It will sort of arise, I think, out of some of the actions that play out over the next session and a half, give or take. But it's already sort of you've already had the dream, and you've already talked to Kestrel, right? This is something that's sort of brewing in the background as we get started. And so I do want to ask each one of you, starting with Marion, what was your dream of the Castle Perilous? What did you see? And for you, it might even be more, knowing that you get visions already, right? You may be the person who took it the most in stride.
My dream of the Castle Perilous. All right. So what I'm thinking is that I think I tell other people that it was a dream, but it wasn't a dream. I think it was actually something that was spoken to me by, and I gave her a name. I need to kind of go back and remind myself of the name of the cook, Wolfhild. I think Wolfhild had something like a tarot deck that she showed me with all sorts of kind of interesting drawings on the cards, one of which was a castle. And she was, showing me how she conducted a prophecy using these cards, and the castle played a kind of key role in one of these prophecies that she shared. And I think one thing that I distinctly remember about her, her prophecy that she put together was that I think it was that this castle that this castle was sitting in plain sight, but because of either because of magics or people's own blindness, nobody kind of realized that it was actually so close. Right. So like not knights might be out seeking the castle far away, but right, those knights would never find it because it was actually somehow very close at hand.
I love it. That's great. I love that it's not just a dream. That's cool. I mean, related to that, a question I maybe should have asked. So generally speaking, you don't have So Wolfhill taught you the ways of prophecy, but in general, other people don't know that. Like, does the wizard Kestrel know that you see prophecy? Have you talked to anybody else about it? Is it just sort of Wolfhild?
Yeah, I think it is just Wolfhild. I mean, I'm just myself still trying to kind of I'm still trying to wrap my head around like exactly what I think about Wolfhild, and but I think I have seen enough to kind of realize that Wolfhild is not just blowing smoke when she kind of talks to me about this, and when she delivers the prophecies, that things have happened that she has told me would happen, and I kind of realized that, right, that this isn't just kind of random, right? But yeah, I'm and I do think that I'm developing this skill as well, but yeah, I just I'm a little unsure as to how other people would react to it. People see Wolfhild. I know that they think of Wolfhild as something of an eccentric, as a kind of oddball, and I don't entirely want to be thought of that way. So
Yeah, but I think she does have a relationship with the wizard. I don't know what it is yet, but they there's something there. Cool, cool. I love all of that. All right, Ian, what was Galen's dream like?
I think this is a dream that Galen has had several times. Not much has changed between iterations, and it's been like, every other night for the last 2 weeks. I think that Galen finds himself standing on this sort of the rim of a bowl, a huge bowl, a tremendous bowl, so large as to hold the entire world in it. And I think that when he looks to his right, he can see that there is something moving towards him, slowly at first, but gathering speed as it gets closer. It's not just a bowl, it's a clock. It's a huge clock, and he's standing at the edge of the clock, and what is racing towards him now is the minute hand of the clock. And at the center of the bowl, at the center of the world, pinning the minute hand and the hour hand in place is the Tower Perilous, wreathed in fog and smoke. And he knows he's running away from the minute hand, but he's not trying to escape it. He's trying to match speed, because he knows that he's only going to have one chance to grab on, to let the wave, to let this sort of wave of the present carry him forward, or else he'll be knocked off, or ground beneath the minute hand, or just left behind, I suppose. And every night the minute hand gets closer, but it hasn't arrived yet.
That's very good.
Yeah.
All right. That's great. I want to
made all the more difficult because who knows what a clock is?
Well, I think it's okay that there are clocks, right? You build this weird, fantastic stuff, but in a world, I imagine you're not the only one who does that, right?
No, probably Eleanor or Eloise has a clock or two.
Right, but they're not common. All right. I'm going to ask another question now, just because you have not yet sort of named your the knight who you're squired to.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, this is Lady Amelia Rathscombe. Rathscombe, Rathscombe. Valiant woman who only has time for Galen's tricks insofar as they provide results. And insofar as they can be sort of pulled off in such a way that they are not obviously cheating. He was pleasantly surprised when she I think that he debuted while sparring a sort of like spring-loaded, what do you call the armor, like vambrace or spring-loaded vambrace that would extend his arm by just like an inch when he swung his sword to like make his opponent misjudge the distance. And she said something like, "This is good, but make it half an inch instead."
That's fantastic. Love it. Very, very precise. Good lessons to teach you. Good lessons.
Otherwise, like most of the time he goes overboard and then it's a swift kick in the rear.
Sure. That's good. That's good. All right. Caradoc, talk to me about your dream.
I think the dream is almost like a memory half remembered of a childhood among family in a feasting hall that was burnt long ago. And I think as the feasters revel and gather, Caradoc realizes that he is amid ghosts. And that it's here within the Tower Perilous that the dead do not remain dead. Was there more I need to say there?
No, I just wasn't sure. You ended on like a little bit. I wasn't sure if there was more.
No, yeah, that's it.
That's an
Sorry.
amazing dream. That's perfect. How did you? I mean, I think, frankly, the wizard Kestrel, right? The wizard, when you tell him this, I think looks at you and asks, how you feel about the dead not remaining dead. The dead walking. Right? The wizard knows who you've lost.
I think this is like, I think in any conversation with the wizard Kestrel, I don't think I trust the wizard Kestrel. I think that it tries to both be honest and careful, that like, I know better than most that the dead never truly remain upon one side of the door. That whatever we may wish to do to banish them from our minds, they remain walking with us, even if we can't see them. That there are wounds that remain where they once stood.
I know we're not really there yet, but I kind of want to ask you to roll and impart a lesson. Right, the first step towards healing is acknowledging one's wounds. We don't have to. It just felt like that's what just. I just felt kind of like that's what just happened. Or we can let it go for now and
I mean,
back.
we can. I can roll.
What does everyone else think? Do we want to roll some dice here?
I don't know where the die roller is, but I can roll.
I'm game to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
So what am I rolling?
So impart a lesson. It's one of the basic moves. When you attempt to impart a lesson to a PC or NPC, choose how much heart you want to put into it. You only have one to start with. If they resist the lesson, do NPCs roll for this? This is not clear to me from the materials you gave me.
Yes, this is the move that NPCs potentially roll for. So
awesome.
So in fact, the roll here is if the NPC is resisting the lesson, they would roll either a flat roll or minus something if Stephen is putting heart into this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there isn't. I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, I'm not really rolling anything here.
Yeah. Truthfully, it's Kestrel. I think Kestrel accepts the lesson from you anyway.
Okay.
So you can. So that's when you accept the lesson. What happens when someone? How do lessons work with NPCs? I'm realizing there's not like
it just becomes a lesson the NPC has
and then learned. Right. I will make a note.
Make a note of it. People can
make a note. I will make a note that the wizard Kestrel has learned this lesson.
Once you know an NPC's lesson, once you know things that NPCs believe, right, you can potentially try and kind of influence them through those lessons.
Sure.
Invoke a lesson as a move that ties into this.
Sure. I love this. I love this. This is really good. Amazing. Cool. All right. New question, Caradoc. We have not learned. You haven't yet mentioned the knight to whom you are squired. Who do you think that is? Is it one of these other knights? Is it someone else that we haven't heard of yet? We've now got a chonky list of NPCs, some of whom could potentially be knights, even if they're not. No one else is squired to them yet.
So everyone needs to have a different knight as a squad.
No. You could share, and you could choose one of the knights that someone else has already. They can both be. You could be squired to someone that's the same knight as someone else.
Who are the current knights out there? I want to remind myself here.
So the king and queen are both knights. Presumably, they can have squires, right? That's a knight. Then there's Sir Parver, who's an old but formidable knight who is Olwen's mentor, values grit and lateral thinking. There is Eloise of Jovian Hill, who is not a knight, who is not no one who.
I'm gonna just go with the dramatic one and just King Hadithar. They're my brother. I'm their squire. They're like my brother. I'm their squire. It's a very complicated relationship. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think that is wonderful. I think that is really, really wonderful. High expectations. Maybe trust you more than he should, or just the right amount. Let's see. Cool. And all right. Last question I have here is for Olwen, which is tell me about your castle dream.
She has had this dream where she sees Saint Yehenna, the maiden knight, kind of appear in the clouds, surrounded by golden rays, and then takes her legendary sword and kind of plants it in the earth, and the sword kind of grows and becomes this tower that looms over everything. And so Olwen interprets that she has to go and find the tower and find the sword and follow in the footsteps of Saint Gehenna.
Yeah. I think when you tell Kestrel this, he tells you very sincere, "Oh, this is a true dream." But there's like a kind of bemusement when you give your interpretation, right? Like maybe,
She doesn't pick up on the bemusement. She's excited
like
about her.
you should
her
definitely go
understanding
find
of
it. That's
this.
what this is about. But I don't know. Do you really want that sword? I don't know. Maybe he doesn't say that, but that's the. That's probably the vibe some of the adults in the room are picking up.
Great.
Cool. All right. Before we do anything else, anyone have any questions for anybody else about their characters? Questions about mechanics or the setting or anything else? Or no? All right. So what I want to do is we'll take 5. It's a little early for break, but we'll take 5. And then actually let's take 10. Let's come back exactly at the hour. And then when we do, we'll start out doing a little bit of like Apocalypse World style. Like, what's the day look like? Where do you start? Where do you go? I just kind of want to get a sense for your basic world. And then towards the end of the session, we'll sort of like we'll drop a bang and we'll sort of end up into like dive out into deciding what to do next, and then next session we'll sort of really be off on our way adventure wise. All right, so I'll see you in about 10. So I thought about it, and I think I changed my mind. I'm going to ask a couple scene framing questions here, and then I think we should just dive into this little adventure and see where it takes us. All right. So Olwen, where do you like talk to me about sort of like morning training? Where does it happen? If who's like is it, do for the first training session of the morning, are you training with your knights? Is there like a arms master whose job it is to like train you in weaponry? Is it just like calisthenics? Like what's where and what is this sort of first thing you folks do in the morning
Yeah.
physically?
Yeah, I'm picturing there's a courtyard in the castle where this takes place, and that when there are a number of squires in training, we are sparring with each other under the supervision of at least some of our knights, right? And so they're they're watching and giving notes on form, and sometimes like stepping in to correct us, or like point out where we've like missed an obvious opening, right? And then we have like wooden training swords that we're using to try and learn the sword fighting techniques.
Yeah, sure. Caradoc. No, actually, not Caradoc. I'm sorry, Galen. Um, uh, um, aside from the king, who at this moment is definitely not present training you, and I imagine is maybe present slightly less frequently at these particular training sessions, this like first thing in the morning kind of thing. Although maybe not. We'll talk to Caradoc about that later, but certainly not present this morning. Which of the knights are there? Who's and just to remind everyone, we've got Paravir, who's Olwen's mentor. We've got Bulk, who's Marion's mentor, and remind me who your mentor and Sir Amelia, who is your mentor. Are they all there? Is it just one or two of them? Are they all typically there? Like, what's the vibe?
I think there's sort of like a rotating cast here.
Mhm.
They have nightly duties. They get sort of like called away to deal with this or that, and so it's a little bit of a kind of whoever it sounds very lax when I say it this way, but whoever's around, whoever is like not actively engaged in some quest, you know. And so I think today it's not Amelia. I think it's Sir Folk
Mm-hmm.
and Sir Paravir.
Yeah, very, very cool. So, it's cold morning. It's like, I think we're like winter folding into spring, right? This is, I'm imagining like an England-like climate, right? So it doesn't get too cold or too hot, really, but you're just getting those first breaths of like the snow has just melted, but sometimes it's still just below freezing, and it's like a cold morning, that could turn into a warm day, right? If the sun ever breaks free of the clouds, but right now it's chilly, and Marion, what exactly is Sir Folk trying to teach you all? Does Sir Folk like put his heart into this, right? Like he's being paid by your family to teach you, but like how does he relate to like the larger duty of training, I guess, and how does that reflect on this scene?
Um, yeah, I think Folk does not put his full heart into the training. I mean, it seems. I mean, he does it because I think he feels like he has to. He's under some obligation to do this, right? But beyond that sense of obligation, there's not really a kind of real kind of gusto that he puts into the training. It is obviously a something of a unfortunate burden for him. And I think when you see one thing that Marion has that is always so burdensome for her is that Volk has outfitted her with this sword that is much too heavy for her.
Yes.
And so she and she realizes, right, that this is not the weapon that would best suit her. And so she's always very awkward and never able to kind of keep up with even some of the basic training right now, just because, right, she's having to kind of, and she's hoping that, with time, she feels like she is building up her strength. But yeah, the sword right now is unwieldy for her.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. Caradoc, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, but we'll roll it back into the scene in a second. So, Hadithar, your sort of foster brother, your knight mentor. So, he's a model knight, a model of all the knightly virtues of courtesy, ingenuity, perseverance, cheer, and valor, no question. But he's still human, and not completely untarnished by vice or just unknightly qualities, tarnishes, we could say. I'm curious, like, what is his sort of greatest moral weakness as an impulse? And there are, there's these 5 that we've got that are sort of the ones that play out mechanically for PCs, but also if you have thoughts, I could think of, plenty, thoughts of something that's on this list, disloyalty or lust or whatever you might think of. Like in what way, what does he struggle with? To resist as a kind of unknightly vice.
Yeah, I think I actually will. I think abandon, I think, is the one I'm thinking of. Like, I think that there are moods of bitter sadness and depression that come over him.
Yeah. Interesting. I like that. So, you hear, as you're all sort of wrestling with your weapons, especially Marion, right? Trying to work through this training exercise that Folk is sort of like lazily instructing you in. I bet he's got like an apple in his hand, and he's kind of like walking around and munching on the apple. You hear like a kind of din coming from the castle gate, as the king rides up and into the courtyard, and the guards circle. You hear the doors opening. You hear the rustle of the sound of armor clanking as guards stand at attention, and the king rides into the courtyard where you're exercising, and almost falls off his horse. And you see, I think, he's not in full. He's dressed, but he's not in full armor. He's kind of in a state of disarray. This is not how I think people typically see the king, or how he likes to be seen. I don't think he's vain, but I do think that he recognizes the importance of the person and body and presentation of the king to the office of royalty, right, and tries to take that seriously. But Caradoc, you definitely recognize the sort of look on his face, right, that he's fallen into one of his moods. And that I don't know. The rest of you might be puzzled or confused by it. I don't know. You can sort of say whether you think about whether you've seen the king in this state before, but it's not. Usually, he tries not to be seen publicly under these kinds of circumstances. But he was, and he comes in and he calls out. He's like, "It's a beast! I saw it! A creature such as I've never seen before. It's unbelievable. It's astounding. It is. And he describes kind of a chimera. We lost Alexi for a minute, but hopefully he'll be back in a second. He describes kind of a chimera. A melding of different creatures. He doesn't. It sounds like just like anatomically improbable. How does such a thing move, right? With the head of a snake on one end and the head of a lion on another, and 6 legs from different creatures. This sort of strange chimeric monstrosity, but it is. He says it was. I was out of the city, and it was lapping up water from the river, and it's two of its heads turned and looked at me and pierced me to my heart. And he sort of like bends over. He doesn't fall all the way over, but he sort of like does a semi crouch and kind of puts his elbows on his knees. If you've ever I'm thinking like a quarterback between plays. Sometimes if there's like a few seconds, if they're waiting, they don't go all the way down. They don't have the time, but they'll like catch the breath and take their weight off a little bit by putting some of their weight on their knees. And he's just sort of there, breathing heavily. And does I think everyone, all of the sort of the general people of the everyone's sort of like shocked by this. This is not something that feels normal. And I'm curious, does anyone step up, say something, do something?
I think I guess being a squire will rush forward. I fall to one knee in front of him, and I think that what I'm doing is I'm performing. I kind of put on a performance of fear and weakness here. Like I kneel before him and I say, "My liege, we of the court are not We are mere knights and squires. What word does could we require the guidance of a king. And I think I give him like a look and like mouth like, is everything all right to him? Like, I guess I'm sort of both. I guess I'm sort of aiming for offering encouragement here. Like, I am performing weakness so that he can perform strength.
Yeah.
Because right now he is appearing weak before everyone here.
I love that. I love that. He looks you in the eyes, and I think this is like probably the most vulnerable you've ever seen him. I don't know that anyone else catches that much, right? Because you're right there face to face with him, but everyone else is still shocked, and he sort of grips your shoulder tightly, like he comes up from the lowly and he grips your shoulder tightly. And why don't you roll plus cheer?
And I roll 2d6 here.
2d6 plus cheer, yeah. This is a PBTA.
All right, so that's a 9.
It's a 9.
Which means that you, as the person I'm using it on, pick.
I think this is, we share a moment of comfort, right? Like what you're doing works. So mechanically, you can presumably gain 1 heart because you don't have any tarnish here.
Yeah.
And heart you can spend for stuff. And I think what happens to the king, you see him like he grips your shoulder a little bit, and I think his eyes smile at you, right? There's like a connection there. The smile doesn't show up on his face, as he sort of uses, it's this like amazing kind of sleight of hand. You're the only one who really knows what's happening, right? But like he's using you to sort of like push himself up, right, while at the same time make it appear as if he is lifting you back up, right? And I imagine you're playing along also, right? You're like doing this stuff with your body.
Yeah.
That's how you sort of described it, right? Like you were feigning weakness to sort of help bolster him. And I wanted to ask sort of like a gender question for a second because of how you described Caradoc. Like in terms of sometimes presenting as masculine and sometimes as femme, and using different pronouns under those circumstances. Is this sort of based?
I think I'm going by he, him right now.
By he, him, right? I guess I'm curious if this is like a role-based thing, a moment-to-moment based thing, a whim, like, but you don't have to answer that really. If you just sort of, if it's clear here that you're
thinking about it, it was something that seized me for the character, and I'm thinking about it still.
I like it, so we'll learn and play. I like that a lot. So I think here, he follows your lead, and he says, of course, brother, you're absolutely right. There is a creature, and he said, and now, like from no longer leaning on you, but kind of like with the deep voice of leadership. Again, I think Caradoc and probably maybe Marion, right, with that oracular eye, is able to catch that there's a little bit of an edge here, but it's very, very slight and hard to notice, right? He says. I thought I saw a creature. I was out riding to take of the air in the morning, and I saw a creature so strange to behold, so wondrous. I don't know whether it was angelic or demonic or perhaps something else.
I think at this Galen is going to sort of like turn his shoulder just a little bit so that he can mutter to Olwen without being overheard and say, "Perchance it was a lady beast that has our king all abustled."
Oh,
Galen Merchant, you watch that tongue of yours. The king is right there.
Shrugs.
yeah. And it's the as you're saying this, right, the speech sort of goes on, right, about how we must, you know, we we must we must first we must hunt this beast. We must find this beast, learn of it what we can. Perhaps it is either a sign from God or a or a or a creature of the devil. But one or the other, one or the other, we must learn more of it.
Your Highness, my liege, what qualities did the creature have that were so striking to you, if I may? Did it have horns, wings? What manner of beastly accoutrement did you observe?
So,
Long lustrous lashes, to be sure.
so he had in his
like
sort of
steps on Galen's foot on
Yeah.
purpose.
he had his sort of in his fit described it very loosely, but he'll give you more here and now, right? Where he says it was it is impossible to describe in its fullness. It was an amalgam of many creatures, heads coming off at odd angles, the head of a goose, the head of a snake, the head of a bear, with limbs, with many limbs and wings, some fearsome and some lamb-like. I didn't. It was all very. It was so quick. I saw it so quickly before I was away, before my horse spooked at the sight of it, that I couldn't tell you for sure where one part ended and the other began.
You know, Marion will boldly step in front of the king and kneel down and say, you know, what you describe is clearly some type of either miracle or ominous beast. But should you need somebody to venture forth to get more information and to confront this beast, I would be most honored to take on that task.
I think as you're saying that, Sir Folk steps up before the king can even answer, right? steps up behind you, kind of grabs you by the, you know, if you're wearing like a padded gambeson or something, right, in training, right, grabs this kind of gambeson and sort of pulls you back, and says, and doesn't speak to you at all, doesn't and says Your Majesty, I'm so sorry for my squire's for my squire's impertinence. You will of course assign this task to the experienced knights for whom it is to whom it is most appropriate. She should not have said such a thing. And though he's saying this to the king, this is a lesson he's trying to impart to you, right? Which is know your place, but it's not just know your place, right? It is it is because I don't want it to just be that sort of like putting you right. Know your place, and fill it boldly. Right. I think is the full lesson that he's trying to impart here, right? Where sort of like the king will assign this to whom it is for, and they will do that job. You should not step up, but should you be assigned the job, do it well. But right now he's telling you to know your place in that sense. I'm gonna take a note. At least one lesson he has to impart is know your place and pull up boldly, so that it's there in the character.
And then the big question is, does
yeah. So this is how this works, right? I'll tell you. So you can choose to accept the lesson, mark on watch, and you can include it as a temporary lesson that you now have, and do that. You can resist the lesson, which requires you to roll. And you roll without a stat. You just roll a flat 2d6. So are you gonna accept it? A notch is experience.
I don't think Marion wants to accept that.
I didn't think she would.
Oh.
All right. So roll flat. This is one of the basic moves. Resist a lesson. When you listen, lets me roll without a stat. On a 10+, you stand firm, and you can impart a lesson back. On a 10+, I love that. On a 7 to 9, you both dig in, and you have to mark a tarnish. And on a miss, you have to mark a tarnish and record their lesson as a temporary lesson.
Okay.
Tell the GM how you got past they got past your defenses. So go ahead, roll 2d6 flat.
All right. So I got a 10.
All right. You succeed all out. Impart a lesson to them, either one of your existing ones or a new one. And if it's a new one, you can record it for yourself as a temporary lesson.
Okay, so you said I can impart. I'm imparting a lesson to Folk.
Mr. Folk, yeah. Which you can then use, right? That's something that fictionally you're gonna respond in fiction, right? Sort of to what he does. And he's gonna say, "Oh, that was pretty good," right? You were right. He might not say that, but he's sort of learned from you, right? That's what that means in fiction.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the lesson is one that's already there, which is hesitation is for the faint of heart and small of soul, right? I mean, right?
No, absolutely. That's a lesson that you have already learned, and so you could definitely impart it to him. Yeah. How do you show that? How do you show that? I love that.
So as he is kind of grabbing me by the scruff, I think I impart it by not doing this in a way that's super public, but I as he's trying to give me that lesson that he was trying to give me, I say, so that he can hear it, but others would have a hard time hearing it, say, look at the king. He needs us now. And I think, my suggestion, I think, would sink in. I mean, he does look at the king, and he kind of realizes that, that the king is in need of bolstering right now, and this is hardly the time to be pulling back on somebody who he needs knights at this point. I mean, he needs knights and if need be squires to address this beast that has so clearly shaken him.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think you see two things. Everyone, the entire assembled crowd sees kind of the king react. The king laughs. Not, and it's like that abandon is sort of shaken from him. I think in that moment, Caradoc, you especially notice this, and maybe Marion too, because having had that sort of insight, right? And he laughs out loud, and he says, he says, "It's okay, Sir Folk. I admire your squire's initiative, um, uh, um, and 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 boldness. She is not faint of heart, um, uh, and I think also what all of you pick up, right? Like he knows who Folk Yaxley is, right? Um, he might not know exactly the financial arrangement you've made, but he knows that there's Folk has his share of tarnish. Who doesn't? Um, but there's a sense, and so I think you're sort of, this is maybe the first time you realize that maybe Folk's status as a knight is not ideal in the space of the court too, right? There's a thing, and Folk is being reminded of his place, king. Addition to learning your lesson, he's also reminded of his own. And he says, who else will step up to aid the young Squire Marion in seeking out this beast?
Olwen puts a hand up, and in her hand is a book. Your Highness, I would be honored to assist, and if I may, and she's like flipping through the pages and wants to like show him, woodcuts from this bestiary to try and see if any like spark recognition.
Sure. Go ahead and roll plus ingenuity.
Cool. And to be clear, I'm trying to trigger my temperament move here, which is 4 over tomes. That it's triggered when I turn to my my books for answers. I think perhaps I'm leaning into my lesson. Everything secret is worth uncovering, as I try and work this out. So
sure,
can I mark that for an advantage here?
Absolutely, may. The way I want to do advantage with roll with me
Yeah.
is so it gives you a sequence of 3 dice.
Yeah.
It gives you each of the individual results. The one on the far left is sorry, that's with tarnish. That's
Okay.
that's if you're getting an advantage with tarnish.
No,
it doesn't actually matter.
Just normal advantage here.
If you use tarnish to gain advantage, the far left die will be the dark die.
Cool.
But we don't have to worry about that here.
I will just roll these 3. Got a 3, a 6, and a 1. Disregard the 1.
Beautiful.
3 and the 6 plus 1 for my stat makes it a 10. Booyah.
Makes it a 10. Write yourself a temporary. So I hit you. Find a story insight relevant to your situation. Work out with the GM what it is. I have a thought, because I kind of know what this creature is already.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to provide like some narrative context for this, I think the basic legend is this is the questing beast. It is a creature that is out of legend, that has been spotted by people. It is usually seen by them when they are at their lowest. And lowest not in the sense of like, we talked about king being stated of abandon, of being sort of low hope. This is the lowest in the sense of like when they are their worst self. I don't know. I imagine the story doesn't actually say that explicitly. Right. I think the story probably, there's like 2 or 3 different stories in the book, right? Yeah. A woman who sees the creature, in the aftermath of a tryst as part of an extramarital affair, right? Another, a warrior who sees it upon fleeing from battle, right? another person who sees it upon having cheated another person at cards, right? There's sort of different stories you could put together, right? And the other kind of key thing is that there is someone who hunts it. Always there's a hunter. In each of the stories, it's a different name. Yeah, take that. Take those heart. Everyone take the heart that you think you get. But the other sort of piece that you, sorry, they have a different name. One is a Sir Dundarian, one is a Sir one is a Lady Alwyn. It's not clear how these hunters are connected necessarily, but there's always someone who is hunting, and at the end of the tale, the beast is never caught.
Yeah, maybe even the book, like, the book is under no obligation to be like super clear and explicit to us. So maybe like the book just says, there is a hunter, capital H.
Yes,
there is always a hunter.
Sure.
Anytime the beast is seen, the hunter is not far. Right.
Yes.
And then it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't explain anymore. And then, like, flipping through, like, is there anything more?
Yeah. So go ahead and write yourself a temporary lesson based on what you've learned.
I'm going with the temporary lesson. Beware the hunter of the beast, just to be nice and
interesting,
concrete here. Yeah,
interesting. I think that's the final answer for you to learn. I don't think the tale explicitly marks the hunter as dangerous to other people.
Oh, interesting.
Right? It's the hunter. The hunter is hunting the beast. Maybe I don't think it's in the versions of the tales that you're seeing. Right? Does someone else hurt by the hunter? Is that like one of the things that happens in these stories? Deliberately, by accident?
Can we say that sometimes someone gets between the hunter and the beast and gets hurt, and like the tale doesn't say like what the hunter's motive or reaction is, just that there's a like danger coming between the hunter and their prey. Oh, yeah. Maybe that's the lesson. Come not between the hunter and its prey.
There you go. I like that. That's great. Cool. Yeah. So the king says, "Oh, so the king's. How do you say this to the king?"
I think like I was flipping through the bestiary, right, and like held up a couple like images, and he pointed to one that resembled what he'd seen in some way, right? Like, it's multifarious.
I think what he says is, it looks nothing and yet everything like this image.
And then I'm like,
alike in no detail, but and yet identical in its whole.
Oh, the questing beast. One of the most mysterious stories. It says, okay, did you see a hunter? It says there's always a hunter seeking the beast. It wears different faces, but there always is a hunter, and it can be dangerous to stand between the hunter and the beast. No hunter. Okay.
No, just perhaps you and Sir Marion and anyone else who goes after it will be the hunter in this tale.
Maybe. Huh. We could be the hunter. And like she's like processing that clearly, and giving it some thought.
Mm-hmm. Who else? Caradoc, what say you? Will you go? Will you go and hunt this creature who now confounds my dreams?
Yes, for my name may be tainted, but I shall go as your I shall go in your name instead.
Yeah. Amazing, fantastic. Yes, we have a I think at this moment, Galen, Lady Amelia has sort of like made her way into the courtyard and has overheard some of this. Is like, all the hubbub, has arisen, and she kind of like nudges you, Galen, and says, "Well, Squire, have you no do you not recognize opportunity when you see it?" And she's trying to impart a lesson to you, which is she's very valiant, straightforward, no nonsense, right? Never fail to be useful. Never fail to be useful when you can.
I don't think I want to accept this.
No.
Galen plays hooky way too often for this to be the case. I'm going to try to let this one like roll off me like water. I'm gonna make some kind of like placating gesture. I'm gonna make some brief puppy dog eyes at her, before I say something pithy, and like I'll probably go. I want to see what happens.
Yeah, go ahead and so you have to roll to resist the lesson being imparted. You roll a flat 2d6. You can use a tarnish to try to get advantage on the roll if you want. I don't know if it's worth that for you, but it's kind of fun.
Well, let's
fictionally, that's kind of fun.
Let's see. What would I be rolling with here, do you suppose?
So generally you're rolling flat, right?
Okay.
But as I understand it, the way rolling with a tarnish works, you can mark a tarnish oh no, it actually doesn't. You can't roll this move with a tarnish, can you? Because there's no virtue
status associated with it. Yeah.
Okay.
I hear the question behind that. I will think about whether there should be a way to make that possible.
It feels like a little bit. You don't usually get the designer in the room. It feels like you should be able, like if you're, if you want to resist your mentor teaching you a lesson, it seems like an opportune time for it. But we'll roll flat for now.
Yeah. Let's do it. This is 2d6. Resist that lesson. I rolled a 7.
You just barely do it. So when you succeed in resisting a lesson, you both dig in. Don't record their lesson. Both of you mark a tarnish. So now you're going to mark a tarnish. So it ends up working.
It's only sort of a success because it's kind of a defensive role where
that's
7
fine.
to 9 is
in my mind getting a tarnish is a success.
Yeah. Which stat do you tarnish? And what's that look like? Like, how do you show her that that you're not listening?
Yeah. I'm really playing into this sort of like what is it called? Like counter will here, even if it's a good idea, she's telling me to do it, and that makes me want to dig my heels in a little bit.
Right.
I think this is probably trying to think of what would be the funniest thing for it to be here. Folly,
wrath, or abandon all makes sense to me.
It's got to be folly for me, I think. Yeah. So I think there's just going to be this moment of like, kind of heated eye contact, right? where like
Mhm.
I'm sort of looking up at her sullenly, and then without with a sort of a quick turn on the heel and walking up behind Olwen and throwing my arm about her shoulder, and saying, "Oh, my lord, I would be um, I would be honored to join this quest. These these poor souls need a stout heart to keep them grounded when they come face to face with such a creature as has you, all the stricken."
Sure. I think the
Olwen
way,
rolls her eyes and jabs an elbow into Galen's side.
yeah, I think from Lady Amelia's perspective, right? Like you're not she sees the game you're playing, right? You're both digging and you've agreed to do the thing, but you haven't learned the lesson. You're not actually trying to be useful
That's
here, right? And so she kind of like turns and like spits on the ground. Um uh um and you can sort of like, if anyone looks, which maybe no one is, right, you see this sort of like, you know, damn squire won't take will have to do everything his own way,
Mhm.
their own way. Sorry, do I have your pronouns? His own way. Yeah.
Perhaps this beast will be an appreciator of limericks. I know a few. Would you like to hear some, my lord?
Now is not the time for japery. Ready the hunt. I think that's, unless someone else has something specific they want to do, I think that's a great place to kind of close this off here. And do end of session moves, and then maybe some stars and wishes. So end of session. Where is it here? There it is. The end of each session, select one of your lessons and choose. So I'm just going to let's go left to right across the character keeper. So let's start with you, Alexi, Olwen. Do you embody this lesson more and you can take one heart? Do you struggle to fit this lesson into your ideals? Rework the lesson. Do you have more to learn from this lesson? I'm going to put this whole thing in the character, in the chat also for folks who aren't looking at the character keeper. Or have you learned all you can from it? Delete the lesson and mark a notch, which you only use on a marked permanent lesson.
Yeah. I'm going with embody this lesson more and more. For my first lesson, the one I leaned into in the session, everything secret is worth uncovering. I think Olwen is full of curiosity about this questing beast, so she is going to try to uncover its secrets.
Amazing. Love it. Stephen, let's talk about Caradoc.
I'm embodying the lesson. The first step towards healing and is acknowledging one's wounds.
Love it. I see it. I see you doing it. It's great. Ian, what's Galen feeling about his lessons?
I certainly feel that when times are darkest, a smile and a laugh are mighty weapons indeed. We'll see how mighty they are against the questing beast. But
Sure.
At the moment, I definitely feel that I cracked a joke in the face of fear or tension and undercut someone who was being far too serious.
Sure. And Robbie, Marion, how about you? How are you feeling about your lessons?
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, imparting that lesson to folk, hesitation is for the faint of heart and smart of soul and small of soul, right, is one that I was leaning into and embodying. So I'll go with that one.
Amazing. Yeah. Take one heart. Love it. All right. So that's our session. That's our end of session. I'm gonna kill the recording here. If anyone is watching this, I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, have a great time.